As I began to research empathy and compassion, I believed that they were the same thing. However, after talking with Dan and doing more discovery, I found out there were several important distinctions. Empathy is feeling another person's pain, whereas compassion is taking action to relieve the sufferings of others. So, to recap empathy, empathy is an essential leadership skill and cornerstone of good relationships. Last week, I shared a story of two little girls on a play date. As they played during the day, one of the little girls lost her favorite doll, and she was heartbroken. She sat down on the step and began to cry, and then her friend went down and sat beside her and was crying as well. So the mother came out of the house to check on the girls and found them both sitting on the steps crying. And she said, "What's wrong?" And her daughter replied, "Sally lost her favorite doll." And her mother looked puzzled for a minute, and then she said, "Did you lose your doll too?" "No," she said, "I'm just helping Sally cry." Why should we show empathy to others? Hebrews 4:14-16 says, God himself manifested as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus is the ultimate model for empathy. The motive for empathy is to imitate God and to obey his repeated commands to show empathy towards one another. Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Colossians 3:12-17. As these and many other passages show empathy, it is not optional for those who follow Christ. It is rooted in the very nature of God. And he expects us to follow him, to cultivate and model this essential relationship quality. Show compassion to those who suffer. Suffer with those who are in trouble as if you were in trouble with them. How are we to show empathy to others? Once you discern what the others are experiencing and feeling, true empathy will show itself in concrete action. Together, we can carry the burden. Sometimes this will call for words of encouragement or consolation. And sometimes it's just sitting with someone and listening to them. Listening can send a powerful message. We should always be open to the opportunities God gives us to share our resources with those in need. Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? And when did, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" Matthew 25:37-40. We are Christ's representatives, and we need to imitate what he did, having compassion and healing the sick. Bear one another's burdens. Every person you meet has been made by God and are important to him. So for compassion, what is it? Compassion is that human disposition that fuels acts of kindness and mercy. It is a form of love, and it is aroused when we see people suffering and in need. Jesus wept over Jerusalem. How often Do we weep over great cities in this country or around the world? Do we ever weep for our own communities when we see poverty, abuse, and suffering? As believers, we have a special responsibility to have compassion on the poor, the sick, the oppressed, the hungry, and the outcasts, and those torn by terrorism and war all over the world. See Ephesians 4:32. Billy Graham once said, "You witness by the way you live, by your attitude, your love, your care, and how you show compassion towards people, no matter their race, religion, or ethnic background." If we put hands and feet to the gospel message and live it out daily, those around us will see it for what it is. Remember the story of the two women who came to King Solomon? They both had a baby, and one of the babies died. The mother of the dead child came to King Solomon and said the other lady's living child was hers. King Solomon had to solve this dispute. So this is what he said: divide the living child in half and give one to each of the women. The real mother offered to give her child to the other woman because she would not have her child killed. Compassion is not just an emotion. It also communicates action. This kind of mercy, biblical compassion, is how God is described. The Father gave his Son so that you would have life. Jesus Christ was moved with compassion for those who were hurting. Today, the Holy Spirit allows us to feel the same biblical compassion that moves him. Think about the prodigal son. And he arose and came to his father, but when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion. He ran towards him, embraced him, and kissed him. How do we show compassion? We speak with kindness. We apologize when we make a mistake. We listen carefully and without judgment. Encourage other people. We offer to help someone with a task, like an elderly neighbor who needs their yard cleaned. Be happy for someone else's success and accept people for who they are. A few years ago, someone I knew had a house fire. I thought of practical ways to help because I was moved with compassion. We provided crews to clean, wash walls, and provide food and drinks for the work crews. And one even replaced a patio door. Compassion is about the moment. It is about what I have in my hand, whether it is money or talent or encouragement or allowing someone to cry on my shoulder. What I have in my hand that will help another person. Compassion is about those times in our lives when God intends for us to be the healer, the helper, and maybe even the hero. To wrap this up, you can have empathy. I think this is how it goes down. If I'm wrong, correct me. You can have empathy without compassion, but you cannot have compassion without empathy. Yay. Jesus is our model in showing biblical compassion with empathy. Empathy is an awareness of the other person's emotional experiences and feeling it as if you're the one in that situation. But compassion is moved to action. God is a God of compassion. He hears your cries, he sees your pain, and he is slow to anger and abounding in love and does not desert you. An example of God being compassionate in hearing our cries happened to me yesterday. I was at home unloading my car from the groceries I got from the food share, and because of all the rain, the ground beside my car is all mud. As soon as I stepped on it, my left foot went this way and my right foot went this way, and down I went, just like that. And I couldn't get up. I struggled and I struggled. I was covered in mud, but every time I went to put my hands down and push myself up, my left foot would slide towards the car. Eventually, I stopped struggling. A little bit frustrated, I said, "Lord, a little help." Just like that. And I waited, and I heard, "Crawl towards the back door and open it. Then you can use one hand on the door and the other on the frame, and you can pull yourself up." And I did. God was compassionate. He heard my cry. There was no one else on my street. No one would have been there to help me up. So I could have been there a really long time. And I was on my way to my daughter's birthday party, so I couldn't be late. God is compassionate, and he expects us to be his ambassadors in showing compassion to other people. So now we're going to break into our small groups, and Mike's going to put on the screen the questions, and we'll discuss those for 15 minutes, 20? Okay.